Welcome to the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, where we bring you a weekly dose of powerlifting news, tips, and training advice with a touch of 80s rock ballads. This podcast is presented by Team Roar Powerlifting, your source of the most comprehensive coaching and meet day preparation. Here are your hosts, Josh Rohr and Lara Sturm.
All right, welcome to today's show, and I want to welcome my co-host, Josh Rohr. And I think I've said it before, but he is the master of the powerlifting meet. Like, if you've never gone to a Josh Rohr powerlifting meet, you missed out. Really, because he would put on these meets that were epic. You'd get like your own walkout song. He'd have, a tunnel to walk through. He just like put in lots of little thoughtful details and often lost money on meets just because of all the prizes he was awarding. So if you missed out on having one of those meets, well, yeah, I'm sorry, but Josh Rohr, the master of the powerlifting meet.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and welcome to you, my co-host, Lara Sturm. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Wow.
I was thinking of a bunch of different things, and I couldn't decide, and I panicked. So
You just went with nothing.
I went with nothing. Yeah. I thought I'd throw it in there and be awkward. But we have a special guest with us today. One of the Team Roar coaching staff, Mr. James Vang. Welcome to this shit show of a podcast.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Lara, for having me.
So why don't we start? Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your powerlifting history, how you got into it, stuff like that. Some of your titles and things like that, and we'll move on from there.
Okay, so my name is James Vang, in case you missed their introduction. I've been powerlifting since 2011, so working on 9, going on 10 years. The first official powerlifting meet that I ever competed at was a high school meet that Josh Rohr kind of hosted, where I did like a little guest showing to qualify for collegiate nationals. Went to collegiate nationals in Baton Rouge in 2012, and I won. So ever since then, I've just been on that powerlifting, trying to get as strong as I can train, if that makes sense. Since then, I've also acquired 7 more national championship titles. So as of right now, I'm an 8-time national champion. I've been on the USA team 6 times, and I am one of the few Asian American, only Hmong American that's competing on one of the few competing on a national/international level in terms of powerlifting.
That's awesome. So we're going to move into a few Q&As that we had from some lifters, and then we'll kind of get into more James Vang specifics. But one of the questions we had come in was, what is the powerlifting community like in general? Basically asking, are people nice? Are they scary? Stuff like that. Basically, the question was from somebody that's never competed but is interested, but kind of unsure based on maybe some of the stereotypes that are out there. So what are you guys' thoughts? So we'll start with James.
I would say generally from the powerlifting communities that I've been around, which is in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Georgia, they're very nice. Half of the time when you show up at a powerlifting meet, you're going to meet a lot of people who are going to cheer for you, especially a lot of people in the crowd as well. I think a lot of the times, I think people get very intimidated by competing because of that. But when you actually end up showing up, you realize that everybody's there just literally doing the same thing that you're doing. They're all trying to understand what a meet is like, trying to get more experience, trying to put more weight under the bar. So I think if you're curious about competing, then that is the reason why you should compete. Don't have to second guess yourself. Just go ahead and compete and figure out what the community is that you're going to involve yourself in. And if it's a good experience, then you need to stay. If it's a bad experience, then you need to come to Georgia to one of Josh's meets. Then you'll love powerlifting.
Exactly. Yeah, I would second that. I think, when I was new to powerlifting, I thought, wow, everyone here, is lifting so much weight and they all know what they're doing and I really don't. So, at first I think it's pretty natural to be intimidated and think that, everybody else knows what they're doing, but really everybody is so nice and supportive and, cheering for each other. And, if you, need to borrow some baby powder from somebody, and, everybody's just so helpful and sharing. And, a lot of people will help you with things that, if you show up and you don't have your socks, something like that, I mean, there's usually someone who will have socks and give them to you. So I think it's a very supportive community. It's an awesome family.
Yeah, I agree. And, I guess we should say that there's always going to be that one person. So like if you cross paths with that one person, don't let that be your only experience, I guess. Just move on to the next person beside them, because odds are you found that 1 in 50 person that's just going to be a jerk no matter what. You find that in life anywhere, but in general, yeah, that's what I found too is, 90% more than that, probably 99% of the people in powerlifting are willing to go out of their way to help a complete stranger. And I've seen it firsthand, because like you guys said, I mean, I've run a bunch of meets. You guys, have been involved as meet directors and volunteers as well. And, I see it every time. Like every meet I've been to, I've seen somebody that, forgot a piece of equipment, or it's their first meet. They don't know when they should warm up, and they are just going to random people in the warm up room and asking for help, and they're getting help. So, it's one of those, it's really unique in a way, because a lot of times you end up directly helping and cheering for your direct competition. But it's pretty neat. And I think, if you're hesitant to try it, what James said, I recommend just jumping in both feet and trying it out. And, and I've had people come to me afterwards and say, they had been thinking about doing it for a few years and put it off for a few years because they were just scared of what the community was like. But after they did their first one, they're like, I'm hooked. I'm ready to do the next one. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things, that a lot of times the stereotype of the big meathead guys running around being jerks is what people think it is, and it's really not.
And can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always thought about when I first got into powerlifting was, even if you meet bad people, why not be involved and be the good person that a new person is going to meet, and then make them fall in love with powerlifting as well. So it's not always about, oh, if I compete in powerlifting and then I'm going to meet like a bunch of negative people or jerks, right? Well, if you do happen to meet a lot of people like that, you can also turn that around by volunteering and being a judge, and then creating an environment for newer people to enjoy powerlifting. So it's not always about what you get out of powerlifting. Sometimes it's also about what you can give back. So keep those things in mind as well.
Yeah. Well said.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep.
All right. So we have another question. Open Nationals would be starting today. Wow. So what are your thoughts and feelings about that, James?
Well, I was a little disappointed. And I know, Josh has been helping me out for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, kind of putting on my bench shirts and helping me out here and there. And I'm pretty sure he's confident in my ability to lift way beyond some of the stuff that he's seen before. So I was really excited to kind of show off a little bit. But at the same time, we have to be respectful of the times that we're in, and be aware that maybe competing at a national meet where people from all around the country are going to be meeting up in one place, that might not be the best, with COVID and the fear that we have going on right now. So I guess in terms of nationals, I guess the best way that I'm trying to take of it is allowing myself to prepare myself to be the best lifter that I can be for the next upcoming nationals. And if you could take anything away from how much you want to compete this year, just continue to use that momentum and inspiration to push forward into being an even greater lifter during the real nationals next year, probably around May, right? I think that was usually when Open
that's
Equip Nationals is happening.
typically when it is. I guess we'll wait and see if things are better by then, but that's kind of the normal time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's just like you said, you have to understand what's going on right now and, you know, be respectful of that. And, you know, use this time wisely. Use it to work on lifting for the joy of lifting. Because I think we miss that sometimes when we're going from one competition to the next competition to the next competition. It gets to be sometimes about, you know, ego and what we can achieve and what we can do and our next PR and, you know, all that. And this is a time where, you know, you have to be a little reflective and think about, you know, for the love of lifting, just keep going and work on the little things that maybe you wouldn't have before because you're like, I don't really want to work on that little imbalance because it's not fun or sexy. But, you know, do the things that aren't fun and unsexy, is that a word? Now to get better and, you know, lift for the love of lifting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was a little, I mean, I'm still disappointed that it's not happening, but the reality was for me is if it was happening, I'm not sure I'd be going. You know, I've been, you know, I've said it before, cooped up in my basement, basically going nowhere. So, you know, I like the idea of going to nationals. I would like to go, but reality is if it was happening still, I'm not sure I actually would go. So I think it was the right decision. And, you know, it's kind of funny too, because James, I didn't realize you mentioned you started in 2011. And I was just looking back at some of the meets I've done. So I did a national meet every year from 2003 to 2011. So 9 straight years. And then I took a little hiatus from, you know, 2012 to 2017 and then started back. I came back to nationals in 2018 and 2019. So I guess my streak will end at 2 years this second time around.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
Oh, well.
Everyone's streak ends.
Hey, but you know, piggybacking what you guys were both saying, you know, this is maybe it's a blessing in disguise as well. You know, I feel like sometimes even though a lot of negative things kind of occur in our lives, we got to just take that energy and put it somewhere else, you know. And maybe for folks like us who's been like dedicating our lives to lifting weights and volunteering and running meets and judging meets and stuff like that, maybe this is a really good time for all of us to just kind of sit back and reflect on other things that are very important in our lives. Because I feel like powerlifting, you know, as much as we love powerlifting, it takes a very big chunk out of our lives. And a lot of the times we tend to fight with ourselves, like, should we be trying to raise $3,000 to $4,000 to go to Worlds, or should we be spending all of this extra time trying to run these meets when you got like a family or other people in your lives or your jobs that you have to worry about? So maybe, again, you know, maybe this year is just a blessing in disguise for us to reflect back on ourselves. Maybe have fun with lifting again. You know, maybe try other things that you haven't done before. So
yeah,
who knows?
I agree. So you mentioned about being Hmong. So tell us a little bit about that. I know that's something I guess some people aren't familiar with. So just kind of give us some background on that. And
yeah, so the Hmong people, we are our own ethnicity. Most people, when they see us, they'll probably assume we're like Chinese or Japanese, but we are our own ethical group that lives in Southeast Asia. We don't have our own country. So whenever people say like, hey, you need to go back to your own country, it doesn't make sense because technically America is our country. You know, we are like nomadic or tribal people that lived in the Southeast Asia. And we've been living in the mountains or, you know, the forest or whatever you can say for thousands of years. And it wasn't until 1955 where the Americans was trying to get involved in the Vietnam War, I guess. And that's kind of where the Hmong people got involved in the war to help out the USA to fight against the Pathet Lao, you know, the communism that was growing within Vietnam and Laos. And they needed a little bit of ground support, which were my people. So most people don't know this, but we were like secret CIA agents kind of helping out, you know, figure out if there's traps or bombs or this is the road that we needed to take in order to keep some of the American soldiers alive. And in 1975, so about 20-year span, when the United States left, you can imagine, the Laos government and the Vietnamese government, what they would do to a group of people that lived in their country helping out an enemy force. So when they left in 1975, that's where the genocides happened, where the Laos and Vietnamese started killing off a lot of Hmong people, if that makes sense. So you could think of it kind of like we are the Hmong Jews. We were sought out, killed out, and there was actually a law, I think, at one point. There was a Hmong politician, I think, during that time, during the Vietnam War, and even he got killed because he was Hmong. So you can imagine how crazy that sounds. But because of that, we were, the Americans decided that because we were a big help in their war, my family happened to be one of the lucky few that was able to make it from Laos and Vietnam to America safely around 1975 to 1985. So I'm the first generation. I was born in 1992. So roughly about 10 years after my parents and them kind of moved to America, I was born, and then I am the first generation of what you can call Hmong Americans. We don't really have a country to go back to, but if I could choose one, to kind of represent, I guess the United States would be the one, right? So that's a little history on where Hmong people came from and kind of where we're at right now currently.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I'd seen you post about it on Facebook or Instagram before, and I didn't realize all that history. I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of, again, I think because a lot of people assume, again, like I'm either Chinese or Japanese or something like that. Maybe the history part of it doesn't hit too much until they finally realize like I'm Hmong and I'm very proud to be Hmong. And then that's where people start realizing like, hey, these are our own people, kind of like if we were to look at it from like a white people's perspective, you can't just assume everybody's an American or French, right? If this guy's like Russian or if he's German, they're going to have like very deep roots that solidify them to be different, even though they all have similar skin tones, if that makes sense. So if I was to reflect that back on myself, I have a very similar skin tone to a lot of the Southeast Asian people, but it doesn't mean like a lot of our values and cultures are the same. It's similar, but we all believe and we all have different things that make us special, if that makes sense. So if you've ever seen me lift, or if you know me as a person, then I hope that some of the values that Hmong people have rubs off of me onto you.
Wow, that's nicely said.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So did your family all settle in the same area?
I think my family all came from Fresno, California. So California was kind of like the hot spot of where all of the people got immigrated from. And then we eventually started moving out to different areas in the United States. So currently it's California, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. These three are the states that have the biggest population of Hmong people. And then slowly here and there, you'll have like maybe a few thousand to 5,000 people that live in like Colorado or Massachusetts and Georgia. So that's why you see me in Georgia.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the only national champion from the Hmong?
As of right now in powerlifting.
Oh,
so there's
okay.
a lot of Hmong people, we get into like mixed martial arts or Muay Thai or boxing, stuff like that. As of recently, the most well-known international athlete is Sunisa Lee. She's like the first generation of Hmong Americans who were born in America that has support from their family that got to the Olympic level in gymnastics. So she's like, I think 13 or 14 years old or something like that. So I guess you can say I've been holding it down for our people all the way until she kind of took the torch a little bit, and now she's getting like a lot of limelight. And then vice versa for me. You know, I was holding the torch for all those people who came before me, who was trying to even just get into sports, you know. So me just being a powerlifter means a lot. Maybe not for other people, but the fact that I'm able to be a successful powerlifter says a lot to a lot of young Asian Americans who are trying to figure out what they want to do in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know, this guy, he's an Asian American too, and look at what he's able to do with some of his passions. You know, he's well known for these things. Why can't I do that with something that I love? You know, and then that's where the question continues to go forward, where we now have someone like Sinisa Lee, where their parents are actually there and supportive of what they do, versus kind of like what I do. You know, you see like a lot of friends here and there that really love some of the things that I do because of some of the things that I've been able to do for them. And then you'll see those random people here and there, right, that I consider family. But none of you have ever seen someone who was a real family member that ever showed up at a meet or just talked to you all or anything like that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So what I'm doing right now is still very new, I guess, if that makes sense, to a lot of Hmong Americans.
So you're kind of breaking out of the norm.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Very much so.
Yeah. So you said that you had started with a powerlifting meet from Josh's in high school and yes. prepped for that and then won collegiates. Like, how did you kind of come out of nowhere to win collegiates? What were you doing before?
Well, I guess this will be getting a little bit more personal, but it's fine because I think, you know, for a lot of the people that know me, you know, this is like a repetitive story that I always tell. But I was going to the University of Georgia at the time. And I competed at a powerlifting meet just because I love lifting. And that's where I met Mark Freeman mm-hmm. and Brooks Conway. So I competed, and then I ended up winning against another individual that was using knee wraps. So you can imagine me coming in there with like my big old sweater and my sweats, squatting, you know, just with whatever I got. Compared to like a guy with squat shoes, knee wraps, and all these fancy things, you know, like what is this guy doing, right? I beated him, and then Mark and Brooks eventually took me to go see Sherman and Josh at Quest. And I was kind of hesitant at first because during this moment, you know, I was kind of homeless. So I was living with a friend of mine who told me that if I help him lose weight, he would let me live at his house for free as long as I continue to go to school. So going to UGA and helping him lose weight was the two things that gave me a home. And at the time, I was like second guessing if I even wanted to go to nationals or not. But kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, you know, there's so many amazing people in powerlifting that allowed me to get to where I'm at right now. You know, Sherman was teaching me the very basics of powerlifting. Josh Rohr taught me how to deadlift. Doc Holloway gave me all of his old gear. Mark Freeman drove me to the competition, fed me, gave me a place to sleep. And all of these things was like the furthest thing from my mind. You know what I mean? I'm just like, man, I'm just like this little Asian kid hanging out with all these white people who think I could be something, you know? And I'm just like, what are they talking about? Just buy me something to eat and I'll do whatever you guys want. But who knew that because I decided to do something that I've been birthed to believe that is wrong, you know, I decided to just take this left field road, and this is where I'm at now. You know, I won my first national championship. I started working more. I started volunteering at Josh's meets, mainly just because, again, you know, this was such a welcoming community. You know, like I felt like this was the best thing that's ever happened to me, especially from what I've known, you know, starving, not having a place to stay, nobody really cares about you, to now people want you to stay at their hotel. People want to feed you. People want to take you to these places. And again, a bunch of people teaching me these things that normally as a young Asian American, we wouldn't have access to. You know, when I was growing up, I couldn't go to the gym because we were broke. I couldn't hire a personal trainer to teach me how to lift weights. It's everything through my own work, you know, of getting hurt and experimenting all the way up to this point where it's like, wow, if you work hard, people who are in the sport respect that, and they will slowly do the best that they can to get you to where you need to be. And all I'm really doing now is returning that favor. So everything that Sherman and Josh and these people have given me is literally the same thing that I'm regurgitating, I guess, back to all the people that I meet now. So that's kind of why like I got into powerlifting and why I love it so much. So half of it is the people, half of it is just the fun of it, if that makes sense. So
Wow, that's an awesome story.
yeah. In case people didn't know, you know, when people first saw me powerlift, I was this crazy, loud, angry lifter, you know. And then now 10 years later, when you see me lift, I'm like so calm and so patient, you know, and so patient. And I feel like powerlifting has taught me all of those things. So if you haven't learned a lot of life lessons through your current life right now, perhaps dab into powerlifting and maybe you might learn some things about life or about yourself that you never knew.
I do think there's a transference of physical strength into mental strength as well. It's hard to explain that, but it does definitely apply.
Yeah, I mean, when I think a lot of people always say like, you know, I'm a special case, you know, and how I've been able to win a national championship during my first competition. But what people don't know is the national competition was easy. You know, could you imagine going back home to having nobody want you to be home or maybe not eating the next day? When you think about these things, winning a national championship is super easy, at least from my perspective anyways.
Right.
That's why competitions, like they don't, like I get nervous, but I'm not afraid to compete because competing is easy for me compared to some of the things that I've experienced in my life.
Perspective.
Respectively, yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of the story of how I got into powerlifting and why I'm so passionate. And I know like a lot of people, when they see me for the first time, I'm just that super crazy, loud person who's like trying to do everything, you know, but I think once people actually sit down and talk to me and get to know me a little bit more, they can see why powerlifting is not just a hobby for me. You know, I understand that it's a hobby, but at the same time, it's something deeper, you know, like for example, like I wouldn't even be having this podcast with you or Josh if not for powerlifting. And I feel like that's a big element that people don't talk about when it comes to powerlifting. The people that you meet, you're literally going to share the rest of your life with, either through training, a couple of jokes here and there, helping someone out, you know, just sharing these little moments. I feel like it's the most beautiful thing about powerlifting.
Yeah. I guess, you know, when we talked about open nationals a little bit earlier, what you're saying now is kind of making me go, oh, you know, because it wasn't the lifting part is the lifting part, but like the seeing your powerlifting family and seeing them year after year and, you know, getting to know a little bit more, like your family would kind of grow a little bit every year and you'd get to know. And then, you know, I do miss my powerlifting family and get to see them.
So you got it. That's exactly how I feel about powerlifting.
Yeah. So I guess we know why you volunteer so much then.
Yeah. I mean, you know, this is always something that I always say, you know, like when you go to, like when I was homeless, right? When you go to like these family gatherings and you see like your uncles and grandparents who are supposed to look at you like family, but because, you know, your parents and your mom and your dad aren't there anymore, and you're like this little homeless orphan guy, most of the time they don't want to be around you, you know, because you're going to bring that negative energy, negative spirits into their life, you know? So like, I've always been like, you know, sometimes you'll put your hand out and they'll just stare at it, you know, because they don't want to touch you. But then when you go to a powerlifting meet and you volunteer, just like what you guys said in one of your podcasts before, was like, we can always use help at a powerlifting meet. So it's like, why wouldn't I want to be around people who wants me to be around them, right? And then it just comes into like, wow, who is this little Asian kid? Why did he bring 10 other Asian people who's helping us spot and load now, right? How is this happening? And then that's where the interest comes in. And then we just, again, create this environment where now Team Quest is my family. Team Roar is my family, you know. The folks in Massachusetts, you know, Bay State, you know, Team Equip Excellence, they're my family. So all these people that you meet when you compete, why wouldn't I want to see them at nationals, you know? why wouldn't I want to take a picture with them and talk about how they overcame their injuries, or, you know, how everybody's being affected by COVID, you know, because we're all human beings too. So it's nice to just to talk to these amazing lifters outside of lifting. So I miss that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say, like, there's been lots of times where I've, you know, either been meet director or volunteering, and, you know, it does take up your whole weekend sometimes. And, you know, a lot of times, but, you know, I have to honestly say that sometimes that there's no place I'd rather be, because, you know, how it's so, I don't know, I don't want to say awesome and cool, because that doesn't sound quite right, but it's so uplifting, you know, to be with the same people that you've seen, and everybody's kind of changing and growing and, you know, getting better, and still supporting each other. And, you know, you start seeing the same people. I do wish more people volunteered, of course. We're always in a rut to find people to volunteer.
Absolutely.
But, you know, where else would you want to watch a meet from, other than, you know, the expedite table or playing the music? That's the best. That's the funnest job ever.
You know, that's exactly what I tell people. This is how I get people to spot and load or become judges. I just tell people, like, you know, if you love powerlifting as much as you say you do, then show me, because anybody can lift weights. But in order for you to go out of your way to volunteer your time to spot and load or judge or host a meet, nobody's literally paying you to do any of this stuff. And if you do get paid, the headache ain't worth the pay, right? So a lot of the times, you know, when you think about people who are running meets, or the people who are judging you, or the people who are doing all these things, you know, yeah, you can get mad at this spotter for touching the bar, or you can get mad at this judge for giving you a red light because you didn't squat deep enough. But at the end of the day, you got to remember that these people are doing it out of their own free will. If they wasn't here, you wouldn't even be able to squat to fail that lift, you know? And I feel like to show people that if you want to get to my level, these are all the things that you have to do. And I'm not saying that my route is the only route, but if you want to be as good as me, then these are some of the things that you have to consider. Volunteer your time. Watch some of the best lifters in the world lift right in front of you as you judge them or as you spot, and take some things from them. You know, because if you spot and load or you judge them, they're going to come talk to you. They're going to come shake your hand, you know, and you can ask them questions like, what did you do, you know, in order to pull that energy, to pull that last deadlift to win? You know, kind of like that Dave Ricks thing, right? Like, how the heck did this guy miss his opener deadlift, miss his second deadlift, and then come back and pull his third and not bomb out?
After
you know,
we went up, after we had a weight,
right? After you went up,
sense.
Right? It makes no sense, you know. And for me, like, these are some of the things that you would have, like, why wouldn't you be curious about? You wouldn't have a direct handshake or a direct conversation with Dave Ricks, who doesn't even know that you exist, if you wasn't right there with him, right next to him. So I feel like sometimes people miss out on that knowledge piece. And if you want to be a better lifter, you know, you have to be very humble and open-minded and learn from everybody. And sometimes you can even learn from a newbie. You know, some people who are doing things who, you know, is bad. Like, sometimes I see people put chalk on their socks because they think it's chalk, right? Not baby powder. So they'll put chalk on their legs, and then it reminds you of what you know. And it also reminds you to be like, hey, if I have a new lifter, they need to know this if I'm not there. You know, I can't be having my new lifter go to a meet by themselves as a coach and have them put chalk on their socks while they're deadlifting. Right. So, you know, there's so many things that you could learn from volunteering and judging. So that's why I say powerlifting is more than just lifting.
Yep. I agree. So I want to change subjects here a little bit.
Yeah.
I am a dance enthusiast, we'll say. But I'm very bad at it, but I dance with a lot of gusto, I guess we'll call it. Enthusiasm. So I'm going to ask you about your breakdancing hobby. How did you get started in that? And do you ever compete in it? Like, do you ever think about competing in it? Or I guess give me the story of the breakdancing. Where'd that come from?
All of the above, I guess. the hip hop or the breakdancing is very similar to powerlifting. It's where you meet a bunch of other young kids very similar to yourself, and we're just having fun. You know, could you imagine like working out? Everybody's just coming in there to bench press, and nobody's got like a big competition coming. That means there's no stress. We don't have to follow a strict program. We don't even have to do anything. You know, we just do dumb stuff while bench pressing. And I feel like that's the part of dance that I was so attracted to. You know, all the people that I've met in my life through dance are some of my closest friends now. And yes, I've competed. I actually do. I try to like time myself in between powerlifting meets and dance competitions. So, for example, we have a mock meet next Saturday. If my next meet isn't until November, that means sometime in September, late September, early October, I want to try to get in a b-boy competition where I just go and dance my heart out. One of the reasons why I love doing that is mainly because there's no pressure. I'm not trying to be the best dancer in the world. So there's no pressure, and it makes me feel much better when I go back to powerlifting, you know, something that I want to be really, really good at.
So is that something that you think that I could get into? Knowing knowing my level of flexibility and coordination, do you think I could be a good break? Do you think I could be a below average break dancer?
Oh yeah. So, you know, with powerlifting, right? You know how there's those genetic freaks that have terrible form, but they can still outlift you even on any bad day? When I think of b-boying or dancing, it's the same thing. I find it that there's a dancer that can do all these cool moves that you can't do, but then they practice those moves so much to where there's no rhythm or feel to it. If you are a person, like you said, where you're enthusiastic and you kind of don't really care what people think about how you dance, I
That's
actually
exactly
think
me. That's exactly me.
For me, those people are the best dancers. Mainly because you don't have the best moves, but you're not trying to be someone that you're not. See, when people break dance, they try to do like all of these cool moves to impress the judges. But then now you're not dancing. Now you're just doing moves. If we got rid of the music, you would still look good. But if you're having fun
let me interrupt you there for a minute. There's one little aspect I forgot to mention. So I also can't like hear rhythm and hold rhythm very well. So not only do I dance enthusiastically, but I do it off beat.
Okay, well, then I don't know that. I guess that's where we would have to train, right? You know, this is where you would have to train. So
start working on my breakdancing.
You already have the best part, which is the no fear of being embarrassed.
Yeah.
So once you have that, that's it. That's all I need.
Perfect.
We could teach you all the other stuff.
Awesome.
He's awkward in all places.
Exactly.
But if you want to see some of the competitions that I've competed in breakdancing here and there on my Instagram, Hmong Powerlifter, I like to kind of mix and match what I post. So every other post will be like about health and fitness or powerlifting, and then other posts will be about breaking, you know, and you'll kind of see a little bit about what goes through my mind and then the activity that I choose to express that in. And I find it that powerlifting and b-boying kind of go hand in hand. If I'm able to do all of these crazy moves in dancing, that means I'm ready to squat and deadlift the biggest weight that I can. If I'm not flexible enough to do these b-boy moves, then I know I'm not ready to do these big lifts, because you need to be more flexible to dance than you need to be able to lift. So if you can dance, then you can lift. Vice versa. If you're a strong guy, automatically you're going to do a lot of cooler moves that a weaker person can't do. So I kind of have like.
So you're saying I can dance if I want to?
Yeah, man. You just start doing push-ups without your feet. Nobody's gonna be like, everybody's gonna be like, whoa, what kind of dance move is that?
Awesome. I like it.
Start squatting or bench pressing in the air. People are like, I know what he's doing. That's so cool. And then you win the crowd. You pull the gladiator move, you know.
Something
you win
like
the crowd,
that.
You win.
Awesome. So we're gonna move into the track of the week. We didn't really talk too much about music with you yet, James. Just real quick, what kind of music do you listen to in general?
I kind of listen to everything, but if you want to know like what kind of hype music I like listening to, I like I like to listen to like a lot of these old school Chinese / like Hmong songs sometimes, where they represent like an individual that have to overcome historical feats. So if you ever listen to like Wong Fei Hong or know who Wong Fei Hong is, just look up his theme music. It's kind of like a fight drum theme music, you know, like where you hear like drums, dun 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 dun, dun, like it makes you feel like you want to fight, right? So songs without lyrics or songs that I don't understand and I just hone in on the feelings that they're trying to put out on the songs, those are the songs that get me amped.
Dude, that's the best answer I've heard. That's how I feel about the songs I listen to. But mine are mainstream. I just don't understand what the words are. So I make up my own words in my head as it's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Same concept.
It's that emotion. It's that emotional response that you get from it that drives you. So anyway, we're going to move into releasing our track number 7 from our Powerlifting and Power Ballades CD. Number 7 is Kiss Forever. Does anybody know that song?
And
no.
Thunder just struck.
I do not.
Yeah, it's thundering in the background here too.
It's a great song. It's a love song for Kiss.
It is. And fun fact, Kiss is probably the first favorite band I ever had, and they're still one of my favorites. I actually saw them in concert twice. I saw them during the farewell tour in 2001, and I saw them again during their end of the road tour in 2019. So they've had 2 basically end of their career tours that spanned like 20 years. Pretty crazy. Most bands don't even have half a length that career. So pretty crazy.
Can say you were there.
I was there. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite bands. And we have, well, I was going to say we have another song from Kiss on that, but that's on the list for volume 2. It's not on volume 1. So maybe next time if that ever comes out. We
were talking about volume 2 and how it needs to be made. And Josh was saying that he might need it to wait until 2028.
Yeah, I said 2028 just because keeping everything 10-year increments. So it came out in 2008. So it had to be either 2018 or we'll go to 2028 maybe is the next step. So we'll see. Yes. People keep asking, so we'll see what happens. But all right, I think we've gone long enough. James, real quick, thank you so much for being on. But tell people where they can find you on social media, and I know you started your own podcast too. So let people know where they can find that, and I guess if they want to hear more about your story, that'd be a good place to go.
Yeah, so I'm mainly on like Instagram and YouTube, and both of those are Hmong Powerlifter. HMONG Powerlifter on Instagram and YouTube. So I'll post like random stuff on YouTube here and there about my training or just concepts here and there. And then Instagram is kind of like where you get more of an insight of who I am and what I do. So if you like reading stuff, which I don't know if people like reading nowadays, people just like to scroll through stuff and look at memes. But, you know, if you want to look into stuff like that, check it out.
I like memes.
Powerlifter. Yeah. And then I started a podcast called Biography of a Hmong Man to kind of, you know, put an insight on what it's like to be a Hmong American that likes to break dance, powerlift, and is struggling with a lot of health problems within the Hmong community. Because you can imagine, you know, 40 years of Hmong people living in America, going from hunting and gathering to eating McDonald's. That's like a whole 180 in terms of dieting and stuff like that. So we have a lot of health issues that I'm really trying to combat and battle. And who better than international / national level powerlifter that cares about their community. So that's something that you're interested as well. You can find me on Spotify, Biography of a Hmong Man. I got 3 episodes up and, you know, working on adding more.
Awesome. All right, man. Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being on. And I guess on that note, we are gonna, sign off. Bye now.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye now.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends.